My name is Jane Reid. I am very involved in this new series, Eat Local. Last week I talked about the reasons to be a locavore, to find locally grown foods, and strategies to find fruits and vegetables grown in BC, or at least Canada. So tonight we have our farmers here. And well, I'm going to get you to introduce yourselves in a minute. It goes along with a little bit of something else. But and then next week we have how to vegetable garden in Whistler. So same time, same station, 7 o'clock. This room, next Wednesday, how to grow vegetables in Whistler. And we will have some garden gurus here. One of them is right over there, the shoot. So everybody can listen to what they have to say and ask questions after as well. So tonight, though, we're going to hear what it's like to grow food for others. And these farmers are all from Pemberton. And the reason that I am so involved in this, I have to give myself a little plug here, my book, is that I am passionate about local foods. I am so passionate, I wrote a book about it over there. And I am happy to sell them afterwards. Special deal tonight. So, if you're interested, please let me know. But we'll get started right away here. I have a set of questions that I'm going to ask the farmers. And I don't, one of you or two of you or three of you can respond whatever you think you want to do. If you think that one person's covered it, well then just let me know and I'll go to the next question. Okay? So, first of all, if you could introduce yourself. Say who you are, how much land you have, and where it is in the Pemberton Valley, and where what you grow and where you sell. So sort of just a little synopsis of your business.
I'm Alyssa, along with my partner David. We're Plenty Wild Farms. We're really close to the village of Pemberton, just like 5 minutes from the village. And we have a 10-acre piece of land. We're using about 3 acres to grow veggies. We also have like an 1.5 acre orchard that's still a few years away from producing apples. That's in the pipes. And we sell at the Squamish Farmers Market, the Whistler Farmers Market, and we have a farm stand directly on the farm that's open on Saturdays, and it's going to be open on Tuesdays in July and August this year, I think. Is that all the questions?
I think so.
Okay.
Can everybody hear her?
No, a little bit louder.
Okay.
What was the name?
Plenty Wild Farms.
Plenty Wild?
At the UBC farm in 2008, that's how we met. But I feel like it was just a survey course, like a 100-level survey course at university where you got like a little bit of everything. And then I think when you get onto land, you start to see, oh my gosh, I know so little. And I worked on other farms to get some experience, and then, yeah, it's just been a matter of lots of trial and errors and making lots of mistakes and having excellent customers support us since from the beginning. And yeah, I think that it's mostly by doing.
Yeah.
There's some like incredibly ingenious farmers out there doing amazing things, and so like we steal things off people all the time, like YouTube, how to do this.
Yeah, I would say like talking to farmers for sure.
Yeah, I think so. You talk to each other a lot
Yeah,
as well.
and I would say even like things like Instagram, like following other farmers on Instagram, like who might be on the east coast of the States or like in Washington, like it's just interesting seeing like the tools they use or techniques they have, and it's not really often that we get to leave our farms in the middle of the growing season to really see how their processes. So I find that's really cool to look at, to get inspiration and new ideas from.
So even the internet.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And like I feel like in Pemberton we're really lucky in that like we have a community of farms that aren't in like the like cruelest competition, like something we can call and ask and like to try and support one another in doing the job, which is really like that's something we've all grown into, but I think it's a really lucky thing. When we started there was a lot of like books that were read, and because I don't think either of us had smartphones at that point. Like smartphones have really been a revolutionary in farming. I can just pull out my phone and like check about plant spacing and like, or take a picture of a bug and then Google it and like, oh, this is this bug. But I do think that like the resources are more available, and like to echo Simona's, just like a lot of doing and then learning to do it better. Of like, you start with a plan, and then like if everything goes to plan, that's great, and you kind of execute the plan and figure out how you might tweak it to make it more efficient, to do better, and or it totally fails, or you think it's going great, and then you see some other farm doing it, and you're like, wow, that's way faster. Like, we're gonna do it that way next time, like our onions.
So I did have that down as another question. There's a, you're not competitors, you know, in the sense that you don't share. You're friends, and there is a farming community. I know Simone, you told me on the phone that that was one of the wonderful things about being in Pemberton, was the farming community. And it's not just you three, I guess. There's quite a number, right, of you doing a similar kind of thing, small, intensive farming, growing all kinds of things, and, you know, selling them to us, you know, so we can enjoy them. Okay, and why did you choose to farm in the Pemberton Valley?
For us, it actually has to kind of do with the last statement you said. We were really drawn to Pemberton because of the farming community. David and I, we started an agassiz. That's like our first year was on borrowed land there, and we enjoyed being there, we enjoyed starting it, but we were looking for a place to kind of set our roots down, and we're searching, and we'd heard a lot of really great things about Pemberton. We came up and visited some of the farms, and yeah, so we were just drawn. There was a lot of like-minded people doing similar things, small-scale organic farming. Yeah, that's really what, and the mountains too.
In the mountains.
Yeah.
So you know, I know that I'm sure that some of you ski and enjoy the winter. So is that part of the reason that you came here, or not?
For me, it was. Which is kind of ironic because I ski so little now. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so we go away in the winter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Pemberton is this, I mean, besides being an incredible place to grow stuff, we've got amazing water. The soil's just beautiful. We're geographically isolated with mountains all around us, and so it keeps a lot of the diseases and the pests out of it. So it's this mecca for growing. But the reason I got drawn to it is because I was like, oh, it's got really good mountain culture and really good agriculture. And I was looking for those two things, and still is thriving in both of those areas. But yeah, I love Pemberton. I love Pemberton farmland, and like I have become a really big advocate for it. Even though when I first moved here, it was certainly the mountains and the culture that were drawing me here. I think over years it has shifted a little bit, and now I'm like so humbled by the amazing resource we have for Pemberton farmland. It's like incredible, that valley for growing. Yeah.
See, that for us is wonderful because we live so close. You know, we're so lucky to be so close to such wonderful farmland right up there. Of course, I mean, it doesn't get any more beautiful in the Pemberton Valley either. But to hear that the soil is that good, and the water, and things that might be problematic somewhere else, it's just right there is really terrific for us to hear that. You know, you had mentioned that to me before, and that was really heartwarming to me to hear that. You know, yeah. So, how about you, Carrie?
I don't think, I didn't move to Pemberton for farming, but it kind of like a life thing happened, and I was considering leaving, and I'd been helping Andrew, and he was kind of trying to like experiment with farming, and we decided to start a farm. So I stayed as the short version of that, and I'm really glad I did. It was something that, like, farming was always, I grew up on, like, my parents were back to landers, so I grew up on like 50 acres, we had orchards, and my family was more concerned with keeping the harvest, so we had like at least an acre and a half of vegetables and fruit. So I had always wanted to farm, but couldn't figure out how, and it wasn't until meeting my business partner that I realized I didn't actually have to own the land, because he was leasing the land, and then it kind of, something clicked. It was like, okay, well, we can try this and see if it works out, and for us, really thankful with the support of our landlord and the community around us wanting to support small farms, it's worked out so far.
Well, I think it has something to do with the job you do too, you know.
Maybe the soil effect.
Okay, so what comes out of the ground, I don't wanna get too much into this, but just to give us an idea, I mean, and I find that some people, who haven't had any contact with gardening or farming or anything, with the produce section looks the same all the time, have kind of lost touch with what's in season when, and I actually have an availability chart in my book because of that for BC. So the first thing that comes out of the ground, I think you've already mentioned, is greens, right? And then, so when the farmer's market opens, we should be able to see greens and curry turnips and radishes, green onions, stuff like that, right? So, because you've already mentioned that. So, and then sort of run through, if you want to run through what comes next, quickly maybe, and then sort of at the end, you know, what you expect to harvest as the year goes by. One of you can maybe answer that.
What do you think?
Well, it's hard to, I think we all grow a huge diversity of veggies, so it's like probably 40 different types of veggies. So
Well, 40 different types.
yeah,
Okay.
so, but yeah, you're right, the green start, radishes,
Yeah.
turnips, I think maybe next would come lettuce.
Lettuce heads, kale bushes.
Kale, Swiss chard, like some herbs, parsley,
Broccoli.
dill,
Yeah,
cilantro, broccoli. Then the carrots start coming, beets, yeah, around the same time. Tomatoes, like kind of like July sometime, August for sure. Oh yeah, zucchinis.
Yeah,
Cucumbers, end of June.
Yeah.
Eggplant, peppers more like August.
Yeah. And then onions and garlic kind of get thrown in there.
Oh, yeah.
Garlic July, onions August-ish. And then moving into the winter stuff.
Like winter squash.
Winter squash and then any
onions.
like, yeah, like winter.
Potatoes, I guess we
Yeah.
can in
Okay.
July for new potatoes
Yeah.
and maybe end of June if it was earlier.
And broccoli's in there.
Yeah, we have
melons,
broccoli, yeah.
melons.
Yeah.
Broccoli
And cauliflower. Cauliflower takes
Yeah.
a little longer than broccoli, but
Yeah.
they're like, a lot of the crops are based on like their days to maturity, so we can, most things other than like greens, we're like seeding, whether by hand or with like an assist, that's like a small thing, and then growing in cells and then transplanting to the field, and then they are kind of like 50 to 60 days is the shortest amount of time. That would be like romaine lettuce or lettuce heads, and then everything else kind of takes that much longer, whereas like squash, melons, peppers, tomatoes, all those are, it takes all season to grow them. Like if you think of it, I always think this is kind of neat to think of, but for, like, we're part of, like, our season allows us one try at certain things. So, like, for tomatoes, like, granted, I grew up, like, gardening with my parents, but, like, as farming, trying to produce tomatoes for a scale that we have enough to bring to market to fill our CSA boxes, we've done it 7 times. And like, if you fail one season with the tomatoes, you're kind of like, well, I'll try again next year. It's not like, thankfully, we haven't had a total loss on those things, but some of the crops do take all year to grow. Like celery takes a really long time, 110 days to get like a celery head. And we can grow it and we're so proud of it, but it happens once in a year, whereas other things we get to do more often. And because of our growing season, and that's like part of the fun and the flavor of
Yeah. So some things are successively planted again, and some things you just get one try. That's it. Yeah. And then the other thing I was going to ask, you have mentioned harvest boxes and CSA boxes. I do find there's always people who don't know what CSA boxes are. I'm sorry. Okay, good. The name would be harvest boxes, where a farm supplies you with a box of seasonal vegetables. They may access other things from other farms, like fruits or something like that, if they can, and you pick it up somewhere. One farm actually delivers it to your house, which is over the top, but you pay up front in the beginning of the season, and that's just when the farmers need it, or you pay in installments. And so it's just what comes out of the field at that time. So you may find vegetables in there that you might not have seen before. So often there's recipes or there's things online where you can, get tips about how to cook something you haven't seen before. So I'm just going to ask all of you, do you all do CSA boxes?
We actually don't do a CSA box.
You don't? Okay. But you two do. So if you just want to describe how it works for you.
Okay. So the CSA, I think one thing that you did mention, I think is like super wonderful for our farm, and I'm sure your farm too, is it's kind of buying a share of that farm for that season, in which the farmer receives the money at the beginning of the season when we have high expenses but no income, and it helps basically fuel the farm for that season. And so it's an economic model that works super well for small scale farmers in getting things going. And so that's one of the reasons that we've chosen to do it. Our CSA, we don't deliver it to people's home, but we deliver it to a common spot. We do what's referred to as a market style pickup, where people will show up in a parking lot, and it'll be similar to farmer's market, where there's vegetables displayed on the table. And if you're part of what we refer to as our traditional box, it's a box made up of what we choose every week, based upon what's coming out of the field that week. And so you come to the table, take one of everything off the table, and that would be your box for the week. We also have a second type of box, which is called our build your own box. And so we have an online store that people can customize their box every week. So we build a box and they can go and say, nope, I just want green kale and carrots, and that's what they get. And so it provides our customers with a lot of flexibility in that way. And so we have those two different types of boxes. People with the traditional box can also add to their box that week. And so we just try and offer flexibility, because I feel like that's what sets us different than these guys who are just trying, I think, as farmers, recognizing where we share markets is kind of each to have our own specialty within that. Okay.
If you don't like radishes. So
We don't like
we don't do it that much, but they're like, I do think boxes, like the build your own boxes and
So you're the one that does the build your boxes,
Yeah.
and you do the more traditional.
yeah, we do a traditional box, like our customers don't get to choose what goes in their boxes, we choose what goes in the box. And we do like a few themed boxes where you'll get like the ingredients for a meal, like CSA returning favorites are ratatouille and potato leek soup. That I always get numerous emails when we send out that box, so you're just getting like the full ingredients for a great ratatouille or potato leek soup. And so we do try and do recipe themes, but it is the like what is in like the CSA, what's also really helpful for us is that in planning what we grow. So when our members register early, and we're lucky that we have a lot of returning members, so we know the numbers. So when we're planning our fields, the size of our farm, how much and how many successions of things, we know, okay, so we have this space, we need like 100 broccolis for this week. And that helps us to build a farm that's more successful and efficient, even economically, where like if we grow like 3 acres of broccoli and don't have a market for it, it's a loss. So in that sense, for our scale and size, it's really helpful. But no, we don't do, we do the box. And like we allow people to like, if you're like, I'm allergic to this, of course we can take that out, but we are picking what goes in the box based on our plan for the season and what is like the freshest and best of like that period of the week. And it is generally that we've like sat down in the winter and planned out our crops and what we'd like to have for the weeks of our CSA. But
And you guys do deliver.
You did deliver.
and we do deliver. And like we've started doing that when we started the CSA, and partly that was to try and do something different than the other farms that were offering it. And that was my research going into CSA as well, was like the one of the barriers was people going, oh, well, I can't go to the drop point or meet it. And so we're trying to get the customers that wouldn't be able to get, like, that are slightly different than, so that there's enough space too, because I think it's part of that trying to like be inclusive of all the farms and respectful of it too. But
So, it's my understanding that it's really successful here in Whistler for Whistlerites to get CSA boxes, is that true?
I think so.
Are
I think
you,
so.
have you still got room for people to sign up
We
for
still
CSA
have
boxes?
room, yeah, we're not totally sold out. We're like approaching the point where we're like gonna be sold out, but there's still room for a few people. And I do, like, we kind of put a cap on our numbers, partly for delivery, for
Mhm.
what we have and the size of our farm. And I do feel like there's probably a ceiling to the model at some point,
Mhm.
being how many people actually want to commit to getting fresh Pemberton like vegetables. But I have always felt I'm from Ontario, but a rural part, and in that area, the community and the space, I don't think I could run as a successful
Mhm.
farm here. It seems like this community is active and healthy and engaged and wants to eat good local food, and I feel like that is really helpful for the farms and has created a good like support network for the Pemberton farming community is people wanting to get that.
Yeah, because you're not the only two that have that, right? There's other farms that have CSA boxes as well.
Yeah.
So how many weeks when does it start and how long does it go to?
Well, each of them they're different. Ours is like
Mhm.
15 official weeks,
Mhm.
so we have a little bit of a shorter one compared to others. But because we have this online store, we're able to add stuff on a more
Right.
casual basis, so it doesn't necessarily rigidly attach us or the customer to it. And so if we have more at the beginning before boxes start, we can do an online order. If we have more at the end, we can do fall sales. So it has a lot of flexibility. But yours runs longer.
Yeah, we just do 17 weeks.
17, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think Ice Cap are another farm that do CSA, and I feel like they do a couple more weeks than we do. Their box maybe starts earlier and delivers a little later. We normally offer like a bulk storage order at the end of our CSA, which helps us like sell off some of our like winter crops to people and gives everybody like the ability to stock up.
Yeah.
Which is really nice for us too, so.
So sorry.
I was gonna say, we do something, like, it's not a CSA and then it's not a box, but we are trialing a farm share this year. And it's quite a bit different than the box models, but basically people sign up and become a farm share member and contribute money towards the farm. Like Simone said, it's super helpful in the spring to go towards all our expenses, because that's when they pretty much all occur for just getting our compost and different fertilizers and paying our staff to weed and produce all these crops. So we are trialing this year, and so people contribute the money, it gets loaded onto a card, and then they can use that card to shop with us at any of the places we sell, so the Squamish or the Whistler Market or our farm stand. So it's really flexible in that basically you just buy whatever you want.
Just like a credit card.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you've already paid in advance.
Yeah.
More like a gift card, I would say. And then we're offering, as part of that farm share experience, just different things to kind of strengthen the connection between the people that we're providing food to and the farm. So this year, farm share members can come out to the farm to help us with our garlic harvest and our winter squash harvest, which will be fun. We're gonna do like a little potluck. So yeah, we're giving that a shot this year to see how it goes. So that's sort of our take on the.
So everybody's doing something a little bit different. Yeah, well, that's neat. So if people wanted to investigate that, the best place would be on your websites, right? It's all there. Yeah, so, and is there a website where all the farms are listed?
Currently, no, but it might be a work in progress. There's the Pemberton Farmers Institute, which is a collective of many farms in Pemberton, and the website is under construction until the snow comes and we can deal with it again. But yeah, I think at that point, we'll probably have some sort of farm list that will be not just but it will be open to anybody who wants to be on it, is my goal. Yeah, so I think it's a good resource for folks that's seeking Pemberton produce, regardless if it's us or.
Yeah, and then those of you who are at the market, they can talk to you at the market about these things, but.
And like if someone is not like an email or an internet person, I think you could phone too.
Yeah, oh, right.
The telephone does.
Yeah.
the work. sometimes we might be in traffic.
It's actually really nice because you can talk and have free.
Yeah.
They can tell good.
Okay, so, now you sell to some restaurants a little bit, right, Carrie? Yeah, not too much. And you definitely do, Simone. And you do?
No, again, this kind of goes back to like the healthy competition. It's kind of like we don't want to step on people's toes.
Right.
Like Rootdown is doing an awesome job of covering the restaurant territory. They're rocking it. We don't need to get
Okay.
in there. And
Okay, yeah, well, you have to figure out a way, I guess, to work together, so you're doing different things.
yeah.
Is
it's like a niche
Do you
player.
sell to restaurants in Whistler or in Vancouver or?
We go just as far as Whistler.
Okay,
And so there's a couple of restaurants and grocery stores that we are at in Pemberton. And then in Whistler, we're at a bunch of grocery stores and restaurants here that have been longstanding customers for 8 or 9 years. But like, I mean, Araxi, Alta, Rimrock, a lot of the Basalt were there as well. But we have like great chefs that we work with. And then for grocery stores here, we're IGA, Olives, we supply a lot to the juice bar, Green Moustache. I wish I had a list in front of me because I'm not giving credit to everybody who needs it. And then we service some catering companies, so Collective Kitchen uses a bunch of our stuff. Yeah, we're at 200 Degrees, like a bunch of little, we have big customers and little customers, so it's a pretty wide variety. And once we hit the ground running in July, we have a minimum $50 order for our customers, but
that's
yeah.
not very much.
No, it's not very much. It's amazing how much it can add up. Yeah.
You guys, they deliver.
Oh
They
yeah, and we
deliver.
deliver to all of these places, so that's how we spend our time driving. Yeah, and then in Pemberton, we're at the new town square. We're at the Pemberton Valley Supermarket, the AG Foods.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have quite a wide list of people that we work with, and yeah, it's been long-standing relationships with a lot of them. I think one of the things that we benefit from in Whistler, which seems to be a little bit different than in Vancouver, is the turnover here in chefs is a lot slower than in Vancouver, because I don't know why, maybe because they come to Whistler to live, and they
Yeah.
just want to stay here, whereas in Vancouver, it's pretty volatile when you serve restaurants.
So it's hard to form a relationship.
Well, you form a relationship with a chef, they buy quite a lot from you, and then they leave.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's challenging, but yeah, we
Well,
have.
that's really good news to hear that it's in the restaurants, but it's really nice to think that it can make its way into grocery stores as well, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and on that note, like just one of the things you asked about my day is like I printed out this Gap Canada manual, because we've been supplying nesters, and I was told this time last week that nesters can no longer buy from us at this point, because there's been federal legislation, and it's trickling down through the larger grocery stores that smaller producers need to have Gap certification, which is a very elaborate manual of regulations for, it's basically coming from food safe.
Good
foods.
agricultural
Good,
practice.
thank you, yeah, good agricultural practices, so, there's stuff like that I understand where it's coming from, it's making it very challenging for small scale producers, and it's gonna continue, I think, in that way. So if buying local produce is something you want from your grocery store, please be vocal. let
Please
them
be
know.
vocal. That's what I said last week.
I went and talked to them, and they sent me to some guy in Vancouver,
Oh,
who's not gonna listen.
Yeah, I talked
I
to,
talked to Bruce, I talked to
Okay.
him.
yeah, I was on the phone with Bilo last week.
It's gonna be impossible.
But you
yeah,
said you could
it's really unfortunate.
Currently, yes, I think that eventually, talking with produce managers, eventually it's kind of, the push is there. And it's not to say we're against our Gap certification, like I feel like
No.
we can probably entertain that idea and follow it through. But we just started production in May. And so like, to get all this ball rolling is challenging. Like, I feel like we haven't been given much of a leeway on it.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I'm just trying to navigate that right now. That's kind of been something that's been on my plate for quite a bit. But please, if you want local food in your grocery stores, let them know. Please, please, please. 'Cause, yeah, you guys, I mean, you're the consumers, and like, we can do it for you, and
Vote with your fork,
That's right.
not your knife.
Yeah,
yeah.
pushing the grocery cart, you have the power.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope that it doesn't become so, involved that it becomes a roadblock, hopefully. You know, seems
Yeah,
like we were making headway. And
Yeah, and I wonder if it's a pushback from Big Ag, like I don't know where
Yeah.
it's coming from, it's federal legislation apparently.
Your
Yeah,
box
yeah.
business will go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it unfortunately squeezes out the smaller farmers that are just looking to like sell off like a bunch of peaches that they have extra
Yeah.
and the restaurant or the grocery
Yeah.
store buy just one.
Gosh, yeah, that's too bad. Huh, well, we'll just have to speak up. So, and another thing I'll ask you, so what are the, you're all certified organic, are you? Yeah, okay, so was that a difficult process, or are you happy that you did that? I think people are happy that you did that, but are you happy that you did that? Are there difficulties with that?
I think it's, yeah, I personally am very happy that we're certified organic. I feel like there's just things that we learn all the time, having to go through a third party who's auditing us and giving us information that maybe we wouldn't miss, or so it definitely keeps us on our toes and keeps us learning. I think it's important for you guys to know too that we're doing things the right way. And I think like a lot of people are kind of down on the record keeping and stuff, but I personally think it's all stuff that if you're running a good business, you should be keeping those records. Anyways, if we weren't organic, we'd still be keeping all the same records we're keeping.
Excuse me, I'm not bored at all.
Yeah.
I just got a call, I've got to get out.
Okay.
And
You have to go out that way.
I currently do buy in the Pemberton Valley, and I think you're one of the ones I buy from, way out at the end. And hi, Janet. I'll be listening for more, thank you.
Okay.
You can come back in. And how about you, Snow?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. What was the question? Okay, sorry, my mind is Swiss cheese. So certified organic, yes, absolutely. I'm very happy we've taken that step. It's just a bunch of paperwork, which is not rocket science. So to me, it just, that third party, the certifications body, I think is a really good step, especially if I'm not seeing that customer face to face, which with a lot of our produce, it kind of gets sold to somebody and then gets sold on beyond that. Yeah, I think it's a really good, I don't think it's perfect, I don't think it's a perfect system, but I think it's a really good step in the right direction when it comes to sustainable food systems, for sure.
Yeah, I would echo the same, like we're, I'm really happy that we are certified organic, and I don't feel like the work for certification is maybe added work. It makes us better farmers, and like part of certification is the record keeping and is thinking of the future, so building healthy soils, like look all the certification being like third party, so we're charged with keeping records and following the like approved practices of our certifying body, which is regulated by a national organization. So it's not, there's like BC, I think we're all share the same certifying body, but there's also a Canadian certified body, so we all follow the same rules and guidelines. And so certain things are like products or amendments even are excluded from that, but the basis for that, those decisions is about building healthy soils, leaving a legacy of healthy soils, and making sure that the water is good. So it's not, certified organic is not spraying, that's not the emphasis. The emphasis is about building healthy soils and building like a healthy farm business, so one that leaves that kind of legacy. And I didn't necessarily know that before starting to farm as certified organic. I grew up and my mom, when organic became a word, was like, well, you're organic. And we weren't, we didn't spray, but we had no idea what was or why. And in that sense, I feel like it's really been a valuable learning curve for us to do that. And the burden of the record keeping and following those guidelines and practices has not been something that we feel hasn't made our product worth it. And I think for the customer, the thing with buying a certified organic product is that like, we're paying a third party, so someone we're not related to and our certifying body isn't related to come and inspect us, our records, our crops. They'll like audit one crop. Where did you get the seed? When did you plant it? What field was it in? What happened to it? When did it get harvested? Who did it get sold to? And we follow the chain all the way back, and that's not through any of our organizations. That's a separate person who does it. So anytime you're buying certified organic, you're buying something that's like follows that process. That being said, I don't know a different process, so I can't speak and say that, I'm not saying that it's better, because I honestly don't have the information to know, but I feel really good about the process that we follow, and I feel like it's made us, following and being certified organic has made us better farmers.
I think it's interesting that it isn't, I think you're right, I think a lot of people think it's all about what we're putting in our bodies by eating this stuff. But it isn't just that, it's also the sustainability of the soil and water, and so that we can continue to grow stuff, you know, and that's so important. Because it seems that that's not happening in instances in, you know, big farms.
Yeah, and I would
So-
say an interesting thing to note is like Canadian organic standards, I would say, are far better than American organic standards. Right now, American organic standards, they're allowed to grow hydroponically and sell as organic, so they've just taken the soil completely out of the
organic.
equation, which is like one of the fundamental tenets of organic farming, so.
Right, yeah, no,
So
it's,
not all organic is equal.
it seems like it's better
It's so
here.
true, yeah.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of, I think, misinformation when it comes to labeling as well. Like,
Yeah,
there's there's a label at the Canadian Organic, it's got a Canada flag on it. And that product follows the Canadian Organic standard, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's Canadian. But it just follows this particular standard. Whereas like the BC checklet, the BC check mark, that's certified organic grown in BC. But the Canadian one is a little bit misleading because you would assume that there's like a leaf on it that it's Canadian, but it just follows the Canadian standard. But it could be from New Zealand, it could be from China, it could be from any country. So just one thing as a consumer that I just wanted to put out there because I think it's completely misleading.
it is, that is.
It could be made in Canada, it could be grown in Canada, but it isn't necessarily. It just follows that standard.
I also brought this to show too, like if you're ever shopping at a farmer's market and someone says they're organic, like they should have their certificate basically with them at the stall.
That's the check.
Yeah.
That's the
BC
BC check mark, that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
And all of us have, like us, when we're at market, we're required to have our certificate, like our organic certificate with us, and it is like, we're allowed to say we're certified organic because of that third party labeling, but anything else isn't, like, you can say you're organic, but if you're not certified by the third party, then you're kind of like, well, you're doing something different. Like, it's still be good.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's the process we follow, and that's kind of the thing. And like, that is a thing where Canadian standards are slightly different, and there may be slight, like, province to province differences, but the Canadian certifying body, everybody still follows the same rules.
Okay.
So far, there's still soil in the Canadian organic label, which we're really happy with.
Good. Yeah, well, that's interesting. I learned some things there that I didn't know myself at all. And how, this is a bit of a tough question, but how can we feel more connected to farmers? Like, because I think so often when people buy food, there's people between us and you. So are there ways that we can feel more connected to the people who grow our food? That's a tough question, but I mean, can you think of anything?
I could try and get a job.
Get a job at a farm.
I think like for Alyssa and I, what's a really nice connection for our customer base is that we're at markets, so you can, like, I see a lot of faces that I see at market, which is really great. And that is a part, and I think with Simone, they do the market style CSA pickup, so you're building that relationship where like, we don't get to see our CSA members necessarily unless I run into them at the doorstep. And in that sense, we do newsletters and send lots of pictures, and in the busy time, we might not use social media that much, but I do think also if you're interested in farming, like following farms on social media, mostly Instagram, because it doesn't seem like we're Facebookers, but that's a neat sense to get a picture, but I do think the FaceTime in many things is a really valuable way to get it, like, to get an idea of the people and I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, I think the other farmers markets,
Farmers
we're
markets,
trying something new as well this year. We've had lots of people ask about visiting the farms, and we really are too busy to like do individual
Yeah.
tours for people, but we're gonna try doing a couple tours like once a month, starting in June, probably through October. So if people are interested, they can sign up for our newsletter. We'll be giving out details for that, and we'll, once a month be doing like a 1-hour farm tour. Yeah, just so that people can see what we're doing and ask questions and,
Yeah. As long as people have never been in a farm field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember the first time I was in a farm field. I couldn't believe the rows were so straight.
On some farms.
It would depend on the farm too, but I think that, like, everybody should go to Melissa's farm tour. Because
I'm gonna go.
it's just a great opportunity to see, like, we are all small farms, so we're diversified, being that we don't have, like, acres and acres of one crop. Like, in August, we might have a couple of acres of sunflowers, but it'll just be for joy. But they're, like, so when you go and see the farm, you're seeing, like, multiple things happening, and that, like, it's, I do feel that there's something really special about the small, diversified farm that people don't appreciate. A lot of the pictures that we see of modern agriculture is like I don't know if this word is appropriate, but it's like the monocrop idea where like there's just like this giant, like all you can see is carrots. That's really exciting for me because I want to see how they harvest them and how clean they are and all that, but like clean being no weeds. But at the same time, I do think that the small scale farm, like Alyssa's place, is beautiful. And it's so neat to just see like all the vegetables growing in their happy little places.
And you guys are gonna be doing the pumpkin patch too?
We will have a pumpkin patch as well, so you can come and pick your pumpkins, which is really fun too. I absolutely love watching people like get excited. And I mean, it's hard not to, they're golden dwarfs. But just that opportunity of like going and seeing where it grew and then taking it with you, it is something that as we're doing it, you can, like maybe many things in life, like everyone has a job that they do all the time that is probably really exciting to other people because they've never done it before. And then like if you were to be like looking in the window, you'd see and it would be really fascinating and you'd learn something, so.
Well, we're lucky here with the slow food cycle
Yeah.
that, you know, people actually come from all over the place, like how many thousands, like a couple of thousand every year.
I think every
And
year.
I know myself, when I started, I just love it to go to the farms. I have like thousands of pictures of farms and sunflowers and hay rolls and, you know, and it's so cool.
Yeah, that's another great
I
event.
personally
That's
thank
great.
you for it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, no, thank you, that the slow food cycle would be
Yeah.
another great event to come, especially even just to see like all of our farms,
Yeah.
we're up, or on the way up the meadows.
Yeah.
So you're through the town of Pemberton and heading out towards the Hurley, and just that road, especially
It goes
on a bicycle,
forever.
is pretty magical.
Yeah.
Pretty magical.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess I don't know if we're allowed to talk about, but we're like in the process of putting together basically like kind of like a farm tour with a listing of farms that are
Oh,
open to
okay.
the public, kind of consolidated in one like brochure and like a website so that people
Good.
can check
Yeah,
that out
yeah.
and see
You
who's
can come
open, yeah.
Go
And
to
do it in
Alyssa's
their own.
road stand and come up to where we are and go to the brewery and check out our honor stand. So yeah, we're
Yeah.
working on that right now.
Molly,
That's a good idea.
The emails that you send through. right?
Yes.
And when you say a picture is worth 1,000 words, it is. Because especially this year, when you did the sort of the, I'm trying to think of the machine that you use for it, but anyway.
Oh, was it the drone?
Yes, it was a drone, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. So the drone picture to get an idea of actually, you know, which field you're in and stuff like that. And then to get that whole process of like the greenhouses going up and everything, because, you know, we're so disconnected from it, right? And yeah, the box arrives and it's a nice big surprise, we love it, right? And you have a great website where you have all the recipes, you could just spend hours looking at recipes, right? But the pictures are worth so much, right? To actually see the girls and the guys in there, you know, with the pumpkins or the melon.
Book, but it was spring and we were too busy to do it, but I have 4 or 5 of them in there, and the one on the poster of the beets is, no, I get confused, is it, you were Sarah?
It's Sarah's.
It's Sarah,
Yes,
Sarah
she takes more
Stewart's.
photos than I do.
Okay, I
It's
mean,
not my
that,
strong
that
suit.
beet photo was incredible, so it's always a good idea to look at the websites and see the photos, because they're so wonderful. Okay, so the future of farming, this is really different than this would have been 50 years ago, because for one thing, you would have been a bunch of guys sitting here. And here you are, all young women. So this has become so popular for women, young women, to go into farming. So how do you see that going forward? We have the older male or male-female, married couple or whatever with farms that have been farming for years, and then we have the new set, which is you. So how do you see that going forward? Do you think that there'll be more people like you, and that those older people will kind of fade out as time goes on, or how do you think that's going to work?
I feel like there are some alarming statistics about the common age of farmers, but I think I couldn't speak to that entirely because I'm in the different, we're still considered new farmers, although less young. But I would hope that in some ways the future of new and small scale farms depends on communities supporting them. It depends on people choosing to buy food that's regionally local to them and that desire. And that is very much if you the community that I'm from, I love it and it's wonderful, but there's just not enough people to support a small farm
In Ontario.
in that area. And so you drive to Toronto to hours and hours away, which is probably what the model would be, but in that sense, so I do think that communities and the awareness of people, I think there's a bright future for small farms, and it's really awesome every year to see how many more women are joining and I do think that the statistic would probably line up with small diversified farms, rather than getting into larger agriculture, and not necessarily because it wouldn't be really exciting for a young woman to do, but the barriers of entry are much larger. If I was to say I'm gonna grow hectares of one crop, the infrastructure and just the financial capital to do that, the land, the machinery, and the knowledge, again, is much harder to attain. Although we learn probably a lot more complicated in many different things, it's a little easier to start small and then build until you find the pocket where your life balance maybe that works. But I would hope that with people and community, people need to eat 3 times a day. So I hope that there's a future for farms.
Yeah, but I like to answer the female specific questions, and I don't know how it is for you guys, but when I get applications for our staff in the winter time, probably at a ratio of 10 to 1, they're female to male. And we've had numerous female staff who've gone on to start their own farms. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of neat people doing great things out there, whether they're female or male, but there's certainly, from what the statistics I'm seeing coming down the tubes,
That's interesting. Why do you suppose that is?
Men don't want to work hard.
Maybe I don't know if it's
We're willing to work just as hard. In fact, in Iceland, they just passed a law that men cannot make more money than women.
that would just be awesome. But I think that maybe I don't know much about I feel partly an attraction to farming is that sense of purpose that you get from actually growing things. The job is there's so many things to think about and so many things, but there is this really diversified aspect of there's the planning, the learning, implementing, there's people managing that we both do, and that's a new thing to learn. But there's that constant, and then the reward is you get these beautiful plants and food. I like to think gender becomes less and less a
Yeah.
thing that
It
defines
might.
our culture,
Mm-hmm.
but it does seem like, same as Simone, the majority of our applicants for our field crew are women. And that are like interested in agriculture or have like been through UBC or like that. That does seem to be the trend.
So maybe it's opportunity and reward is there, and not necessarily in other fields the same way, so, yeah. But yeah, that might settle out maybe over time.
I guess, I don't think we'll know.
No, no. So do you see yourself farming in 10 years? That's my last question.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah.
That's exactly, I would like to see it.
Yeah.
We hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, so you like what you do enough that you would like to, like you see yourself, like 10 years is quite a long time,
Yeah.
but you see yourself continuing to do that.
Simone's at year 10, I'm sure she'll tell you. It goes by.
It certainly does. No, I'd like to, absolutely, as long as our bodies can keep up, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, so at one point,
Yeah.
yeah.
So some of you have already said things, but that's the end of my questions. So if there are things that you want to ask the farmers here, please do so.
I'm just curious about industrial scale farming. Is there a lot of that going on in the Pemberton Valley, or I don't know anything about it?
I would say that there's no industrial, because I guess what I would define as industrial scale is where there's a corporation that basically owns the farming entity, and in Pemberton, it's all family farms.
Okay, and second question, the non-organic farmers, do they use Roundup on their crops?
I don't know.
Yeah, the correct answer is we don't know. Like, the answer that I could give is like, on a smaller scale, non-organic, farm, all added fertilizers or pesticides are very expensive. So a farm that's using a Roundup Ready crop, seed or not, there's always gonna be scale appropriate. Like to buy a pesticide costs the farmer quite a bit, so depending on what they're doing. I'm not sure, like Pemberton is a potato valley, and the potato valley, like the potato growers are growing like seed mostly, so not table stock, but I have no idea like if they're spraying, what they're spraying, or like I don't have that information to say that. But I do think that like to consider like size and scale of farms, that's something to think of too. It's like for
And it's great that they're not, and we don't have industrial farms up there. I think that's a really good thing. Yeah.
So you're saying most likely a smaller farm would not be spraying because they can't afford it?
I can't say that entirely, but I do
but
think that like
they're
for
right.
like if you're like a small scale farm, you're gonna consider and use like different strategies for it. So just kind of depending. I wouldn't know whether they are spraying or not, but I do think that that's something.
I ask a question about soil. Soil is the most important ingredient for growing good food. So, what do you do for your soil? What are the nutrients? And throughout your growing season, what are you using to feed your plants?
We use a lot of compost. I mean, I think all of us use that at the beginning of the season, and then maybe top up nutrients with some organic fertilizer. And then kind of try and monitor the plants throughout the season and see if they need maybe some liquid fish or something like that to kind of give them a boost mid-season once they've grown quite a bit. But I mean, from our perspective, we really try and regulate what's going to be a big feeder and what's not going to be a big feeder in the way of crop demand, and kind of regulate our implement our amendments in that way. And I think whether even though we're organic, we can also have like too much of one certain macronutrient in the system, and so we really don't want to over apply either. Even though we're using organic amendments, we want to make sure that we're putting on a proper amount of those things.
So are you testing your soil?
Yep,
Yeah.
we have to. All of us have to test our soil for organic certification. I think it's every second year.
We get ours tested every year, and that's a really important part of what we do when we're looking at our soils. We look at what's going, that's like basically showing us what's going on in there, and so then we're basically figuring out, do we need need to add some lime? Do we need to add, are there any like micronutrients that are missing that we can add, so that we have a healthy soil? One thing that another factor that isn't always considered, it's not just about what you're putting into the soil, it's also about how you're treating the soil. So like excessive like tillage is not great for the soil.
Yeah, I've learned recently that tilling the soil and,
It speeds up like the
yeah.
microbial activity that's going on in the soil, which is great because then plants can access nutrients in the soil faster, but like in the long term it creates problems with like compaction, and how the soil can absorb water.
Do you want
things
to be like when the soil's all compacted, like over the winter time, so you're not tilling at all anymore, but just are you sticking a pitchfork in there and giving a...
Generally, there's a lot of different ways you can prepare your soil to plant into, and some are harder on the soil than others. I would say like using a tiller is probably the hardest on your soil, especially if you're tilling deeply. But there's different things you can use. You can use like a power harrow, for example, which instead of like inverting the soil, goes like this. and so it's preparing your seed bed, but it's not inverting the soil layers. It's not totally disrupting
just like
that.
giving a little fluff.
Yeah, it's fluffing it.
Fluffing it.
And we're doing a little, this is my kind of pet project this year, but we're trying a few like totally no-till beds to just see how that works out. I don't know. My partner David is very opposed to it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Yes?
I am wondering where your seeds come from. You
That's a
are,
great question. Yeah, I think we get seeds from a wide variety of places, and we deal with seed companies both in Canada and the US, and some of them are large and some of them are small. And I mean, we use Johnny's Selected Seeds, we use High Mowing, which is a strictly organic company, and we are required to use all organic seeds, but if there's a certain cultivar or variety that we absolutely cannot find organically, we have the permission of using conventional seed, but it needs to be non-treated. So it needs to have not had anything done to it, had any preparations or any fungicides or anything on that seed. And not genetically modified. Yeah.
Sorry, relating our seeds, are you planning to keep your seeds from your vegetable one day?
It would be a great business. It's hard to like grow vegetables and do seed because it's a very different life cycle. Like when you're growing seed, you need it to go to seed. So like for some things like kale, it's like, is it biennial? Is that the right word?
Second year.
Yeah, so it's like the seed doesn't produce in the first year, you need to keep it and then it flowers. And then there's certain things to do with like cross-pollination, like you can't, if you're producing seed for sale, like you can't grow certain crops on the same farm or within a certain even like radius, otherwise you're not gonna have true seed. So it's pretty complicated.
But I think it's awesome to do it from a
yeah.
gardener's perspective. I just think from a commercial scale perspective. Yeah,
There's some new like resources coming up too, like the BC Seed Co-op, that their mission is basically to enable farmers to be able to start saving more of their own seed, with the idea that they know that there's some limitations. And it's like, well, maybe if you could get farmers to start growing like one type of seed and then another farm over here growing a different type of seed that's more regionally adapted to BC, and then they're banding together to purchase equipment like that cleans the seed and people that can do germination tests on the seeds, things that would be hard for individual farms to kind of have the knowledge and the resources to do that. So I think that's a really cool project that's going on.
And like, we don't save our seeds other than like, if I was, it would be for a personal garden, but that's also for like germination, that when we're buying seeds from a seed company, they test and tell you what the percentage of germination. So it's not always 100% when you're buying the seed. You might plant it and only get like 90 or 92% germination rate. So then when we're doing our planning, we plant that 10% or 20% extra in case we have bad germination, so that we always have the right amount of plants to put in the beds. And we just found, like, to save our own seed, we don't have that security of knowing that like we'll have 100% germination on seed that we saved, and it might have cross-pollinated. The kale might have hung out with the broccoli too long, so we're not quite in the, like, but it would be, I do think it would be a really cool thing, and the BCC go-up is something we're like,
Yeah, because their goal is
Here's
to make it
perked.
commercially available, so not just for gardens, like for the.
How do you control weeds?
I think all our farms have different strategies. It's something that our farm is really passionate about. And we're finding like we have a multitude, but partly even how we grow things changed when we like decided that we wanted to stop crawling to weed. And so now we've spaced out our plants, and so we grow things on a bed system, or like not really a raised bed system, but on a spacing system, so that we're using these cultivating tractors from the 1950s, possibly before like the larger spraying culture moved into large scale agriculture. That's when those tractors were really widely used. Or Planet Juniors are what we're using, and I'm in love with them. And it makes it's kind of like this really fun thing to get into doing. So
Now, are you using, is there anybody out in the valley using plastic?
yeah, and we use some plastic for certain
Now,
crops.
that plastic leaches chemicals into the ground,
We like,
so what,
I wouldn't know.
is that not a concern?
Interestingly, we used to be able to use a biodegradable mulch, and then our certifying body and the Canadian certifying body pulled it out of certification, and we have to use plastic now. And the story was the biodegradable mulch actually had like petroleum particles in it, and didn't break down. It left particles in the soil. And comparatively, from that which we used to use and the plastic that we now have to use if we're using it, the plastic comes out of the field. The biodegradable mulch by the end of the season was breaking down, and it would look like you had bits of plastic in the field, and it would take more than one. I think there's still bits in the field when we
But it's
use
still
it.
possible there is leaching into the ground.
And to be honest, I don't know the answer to that.
Well, from our certified body, they do a lot of tests and they get a lot of research. And they certainly say that you can only use certain types of plastic. It's not that any plastic is available to lay down as black mulch or as plastic mulch. And so I take, because that certification body is always working and, banning some things when they find out it doesn't make sense, I feel like that's part of our fee, is like we're paying somebody to also do that research. And if they're saying like this type of plastic has not been shown to leach anything in the soil, and they're very particular about stuff like that, we need to remove it after every season. We cannot leave it. And so I feel because of that I feel comfortable using it. I mean, we don't use a ton of it because we're all trying to reduce plastic use, period. But I think in some places, in some cases, and we reuse stuff, that to us it makes sense. Yeah, I do, because I feel like the certification body, it picks up things, with that biodegradable stuff, it's like, hey, we can't do this anymore because this is happening.
Yeah, even things like we use row cover earlier in the spring to protect from frost, it keeps things warmer. That's not in the soil, it's just something on top of the plants, and even that has to go through the certifier. And,
Yeah. They're all of the inputs and things that are in contact with the soil and plants are reviewed by the practices, and I do, Simone, I would echo that. I do have confidence in that. We do pay quite a bit for our certification, and that's what those fees go for. I think that's.
Going back to the seed one more time, could it be that when you buy seed in the store, it could be genetically modified?
Unless it says it's not, anything certified organic is not permitted.
Yeah, it's not permitted. And I think it would depend on the seed, certain things, but I don't want to fearmonger in that. And I don't know enough about, it's been years since I read about genetically modified things now, so I don't know, I haven't read the recent stuff to know what is happening or what is. When I was reading about it, it was tomatoes.
I don't think there's very many on the market for us to buy. Yeah, I don't know if there's any.
As you know, all of you know, I do the nutrition coupon program through Wisconsin Community Services, And next week, so part of that, just so other people know what I'm talking about, people, low-income seniors and families get access to $21 a week to spend at the farmers markets for 16 weeks. And in return, they come to workshops. And next week, we're running a workshop with Anna Helmer called The History and Politics of Food. I'm just wondering how you talked a little bit about like the new certification or that sort of that's affecting to the grocery stores and then being able to get food, but how else farming intersecting, particularly locally, like with protection of the land, ALR land and stuff like that. Big question, but just
Huge. Politics and food. Well, let's see. I think when it comes to ALR land and the new regulations, I feel like from what I can follow, because it's always changing, it seems like we're moving in a direction to make farmland a little bit more protected, and like there's more regulations for subdivision and such like that. I don't know too much about the federal, like exactly what the bill was that came down that caused this Canada Gap and NIFT, or like the whole thing I talked about earlier, so I'm not totally clear on that. I think, like I would hope that there'd be more and more pressure on the government so that local food is made readily available to everybody who chooses to buy them and eat them.
I do think though that there's like a piece for like in Canada we import so much of our food, and so like just even if you look, I don't know what would be like what the right word is, but all across Canada a lot, like partly it's to do with our climate, and that like 30 or 40 years ago our government's decisions were around like deciding what grains and foods we were going to grow for export because what was cost effective, and maybe I don't really think there's a silver lining to climate change, but there, like now the climate has changed a bit. We do have a slightly longer growing season, but I do think that's the like start within your community, build that out. But I think it's really important to be conscious of where the food is coming from and how you're buying, like how you're voting with your dollars, essentially. Like we as just like a community build more food security when we're supporting local production of food that's like the grown from the ground kind, and that I do think is something that's important. Eating within the season helps to do that, but I don't know, in the future, I'm not really tuned into the pulse of federal ideas of like food security in that sense of production, or whether it'll be easier or harder for a smaller scale. I would hope that again that piece comes to local communities. And with the other piece that I have fingers crossed around is like organic certification wasn't an unsurmountable mountain to climb to become certified organic. It often means that your margins shrink a little bit as soon as you have to pay for another certificate, and so it may reduce or be another barrier of entry for people, but I would hope that the barrier and the entry point wouldn't be too out of reach for smaller scale producers, or that it wouldn't be like, that hopefully we're all able to continue to sell to communities and it's not like a locked door thing. I don't think that's coming, but I don't know, maybe it is.
Oh, yes?
Talking about climate change, in the last 2 years, our valley, Pemberton Valley and Whistler, has been badly affected by smoke. What does that do to your growing season, to your crops, etc.?
It's like putting the brakes.
Yep.
Like everything is booming, the smoke hits, everything slowly goes right down.
Yeah.
But there's just the sun, like the plants are like little solar panels. And like I feel like it was last year in August, it definitely delayed our tomatoes. That like they were just starting to ripen, and then the smoke hit us mid-August, and our tomato season was more like September. And that's like temperature, sun, all the things that promote ripening, like daylight is one of those things, but the smoke definitely slows everything down.
Yeah, we noticed like a total market, like in the middle of the season, we're harvesting zucchini like every second day.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly,
when the
yes.
smoke hits, it was like the third or fourth day we could get away with, just because it's slowed down so considerably, not having the sun to provide the growth to the plants. It also makes for like not very pleasant working conditions, like we have to work no matter the conditions. So I mean, this year I was looking up what the right masks were to wear to get for our staff potentially if we have, so it's just sort of like the reality of living in BC and being surrounded by forests is like, it's probably gonna happen again down the road, so it's like, and we can't stop working outside, so like at least we can protect ourselves from breathing in too much of it.
Oh, I just,
There's such a thing as companion planting for flowers and also for vegetables. Do you companion plant any of your vegetables row by row so they help each other?
I think just with the scale, the scale that we're doing, it's very challenging to do that, especially just given growing conditions for certain crops, like a tomato versus a carrot. But I think one of the things that we probably all do for companion planting is we plant flowers just to attract beneficial insects. So that's a kind of a way to kind of incorporate two crops together. But in the way of vegetables.
Yeah, it's a bit hard too, because we're trying, another kind of principle of organic practices is you're trying to do crop rotations too, so you're not growing the same crop family in the same spot year after year. So it's hard when you're getting into the companion plantings if they're from different crop families to keep track of that, and that's really important because there's some really bad diseases that can stay in the soil for like 7 or more years, like clubroot, and then pests too. If you're planting the same thing in the same spot year after year, you can have issues with pests, and so yeah, it's a good practice for us to rotate, and it's hard to do a good rotation when you're doing companion
So is
planting.
that one of the reasons why garlic needs to be planted in a different place every year?
Yeah, because it's very prone to soil disease.
And potatoes, there's like in Pemberton, all the potato growers observe like a 4-year rotation, so they won't plant in the same ground. Like, I think it's
Organic or not, yeah.
Organic or not, it's a 4-year rotation, so I think 4 or 5 years, yes. And for us, I think that would be the only, like, I think we all do the same thing, we grow families, so we'll have brassicas in a family and move them around our fields, so we're not planting them in the same place year after year, and that is part of our rotation too, and it also like builds, I think it helps in the soil aspect as well. It's like different plant families do feed differently on the soil and build different microbial families and put different things into the soil as they're growing, so the rotation seems to work for us. But.
anything else? Well, that was great. That was Thank you so much for coming. That was absolutely wonderful. And thank you all for coming as well.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a great crowd, and that was really, really interesting.